Before this video begins, I don't dislike all Therians, and I don't have an aversion to Therians or Therianism in general. However, the community has so many fundamental issues that are hard to ignore, and I feel as if I need to speak on them because they're simply not talked about enough. If you cannot sustain dialogue within any relationship or community, growth cannot occur, which is why making this video is so important to me. I'm also only speaking on the online Therian community as there kind of isn't much of a unified one person. Additionally, everything stated here is my opinion and should be treated accordingly. You're allowed to disagree and commentate on it in a respectful manner. Not only that, but the bad doesn't erase some of the good the community has cultivated. It's giving queer and trans people a safe space to exist and explore their identity. It's an artistically talented community both art-wise and mask-making-wise. It's provided jobs through that mask-making. It gives people packs and communities and found family. I'm not here to discount the good. I'm here to bring more awareness to the bad so that we may improve as a community. With that being said, and hopefully with you acknowledging that information, I will continue. The first thing I want to talk about, and the least controversial of them all, is leaving the Therian community. People seem to lack the understanding that you can still be a Therian and choose to leave the space as well. It leads to this cultish gatekeeping mindset where if things become too much for someone and they decide to leave the community for whatever factors, people will begin to delegitimize their identity because them being a part of the community is not a choice. But it is and should be for people. This is surprisingly a pretty common consensus too. Again, it's culty, hive-mindy, and weird. The Therian community is a wonderful, mostly open community to explore your identity. However, there's a shocking issue with gatekeeping I've noticed where people will either gatekeep a species or more commonly, they'll gatekeep an entire community from things like fake Therians, which are usually just misinformed individuals or the people whose standards of Therian deviate from what's commonly accepted, if you can believe that. And by commonly accepted, I mean if you don't turn out the same cookie-cutter explanation for your feelings or your species, you will be ostracized and painted as fake. There was, and we still are at a point in time where if you say you chose a species, people will get pissy at you for whatever reason. I just want to talk about choosing a species very briefly. You have to choose a species, or a breed at least. Sure, personality and attributes of the animal you feel you are a few examples that make up the part of the decision as to what species you are, but you have to make a conscious decision as to what breed or subspecies you choose to identify as, and what represents you the most, if that makes sense. Especially since breeds can share attributes, personalities, etc. Therianism is also something people can grow out of rather quickly, as well. Not to say that when you're young you cannot feel or be Therian, but a younger person could understandably feel Therian without actually being Therian, if you get what I'm saying. Like when kids choose to wear those cat headbands and have those faces where they feel like a cat or some other animal. It's due to imagination and all the other stuff, and sure, they felt like a cat at that time, but they reasonably grew out of it, like most kids do. So when these younger kids, like 9 to 13, come into the community, and they still might be somewhere in that phase, and then they grow out of it, people have a problem with simply looking at the circumstances and understanding why they might have previously identified as Therian. They almost always have an adverse reaction. The Therian community is not for everyone, and only just recently picked up during 2024 or so. If someone mislabels themselves as Therian or anything else, it's such a non-issue. Also, kins! Specifically fiction kin. Not all of them do this, I'm just talking about the off cases that happen to be larger content creators. Hint hint, wink wink, not gonna name names. But what on earth possesses you to take a popular character and relate to it, or if you are it, make it into your entire identity, all of which are fine and none of my business by the way, and then get offended or possessive when others do the exact same thing? Like, I get it if the characters were obscure, but generally speaking, they're not at all. For example, Stitch from Lilo and Stitch, or Clay from Wings of Fire, etc. Millions of people have watched the movie and read the trilogy. Or series, I don't know, names for books. If the types of fiction kin I'm referring to, being the gatekeeping possessive ones, were a Clay fiction kin, and they saw you say, "I'm so Clay, lol," they'd tear your face off, metaphorically. I bring this up not only to further the gatekeeping point, but also to bring up the fact that, oftentimes, no one says anything about this. Like, no one looks at these people and says, hey, that's weird and gatekeeping and possessive, maybe don't do that. I just see people egging them on or blindly agreeing, which brings me to my next point. Idolization and parasocial relationships within the Therian community are absolutely out of control, and it often goes unchecked. Of course, the majority of this falls on the audience for a failure to keep distance between themselves and their favorite online creators, but the online creators in the Therian space often egg on the parasocial relationships. But why does this happen in the first place? I think it's happening because of both the age range of those involved as well as some things on the content creators' end, as I said before. The playing into it that some of them do, where they leverage their audience's yes-man attitude to validate their own feelings and desires. They even utilize it to gatekeep things sometimes, or morally grandstand about things. In some cases, they even misuse their audience and weaponize them to attack or demean people they don't agree with. Again, while the creators themselves aren't at fault for their audience's demeanors towards them, they're responsible for how they treat their audience. This usually comes from people who should know better too. As a content creator, even a smaller one, I have a certain level of understanding as to who or what my content may attract, and as you grow, the direction in which you're headed becomes more apparent. As comfortable as you may be online as a content creator, you have to remember that you need space between your personal and online life. When you blend the two and they become indistinguishable, your audience members are more likely to grow that parasocial bond. Not that it's your fault, and as an audience member, you most definitely have a duty to recognize that you'll never know your favorite content creator as a friend. Not only that, but it's imperative that you also don't put these people on a pedestal as well. They're just regular people who happen to have a talent, personality, or art style that you like. Alright, well that's it for now. Surely I won't discover any more issues. I haven't got much to say about these things. I vaguely mentioned it earlier, but harassment and drama in the community is also out of control. There are so many non-issues within this community, or things that shouldn't be the wider fandom's business, or communities rather. Sorry. Wrong fandom! We're gonna talk about that one later. Like something will happen between friends or a content creator, and one or both of them will feel the need to air at each other's business. 90% of the times, these disputes could be resolved privately. Very few of these dramas are actually serious. But when there is a serious drama, I don't believe they should be labeled as drama, because usually it's like a crime or like, morally deplorable things or harassment. Yeah, speaking of harassment, if you do the slightest smidge of a thing incorrectly, such as what I stated prior, you'll get dogpiled. It's genuinely one of the most insufferable things I've ever had to witness, and it's reoccurring too. But that's it for now. Thank you guys for watching this far if you did. As I said earlier, feel completely free to express your opinion. You're obviously allowed to have a different opinion than me. And yeah, have a great day. Bye.